So, thank you everyone for being here. This is the second episode of Resilience Talk that will focus mainly on energy security issues in the Black Sea region, including the consequences of the radical change in relations between Russia and Ukraine in recent months. What is the real potential of the Black Sea energy market? Who can guarantee the security environment in the region if billions were to be invested? How to use energy as a source of cooperation and build stronger, more resilient ties around the Black Sea? Well, we will try to answer to some of these questions, and why not maybe ask some more questions together with our guests. Our first guest is Wojciech Skrobisz, that is a career diplomat with working experience in the eastern and southern neighborhood of the European Union, former consul in Belarus and deputy head of mission in Tunisia, currently expert in the common foreign and security policy at the political director's office in the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Wojciech, thank you for being with us today. Our second guest is Dionis Chenusha, that is coming from Moldova, an economic expert at the Independent Analytical Center Expert Group, specialized in European integration, economic policies, and the energy sector. Currently a visiting fellow with the Eastern Europe Studies Center. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And our very last guest is Rufin Zamfir, that is a senior advisor at the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center, currently working on asymmetric threats. Rufin, thank you for being with us today. Let's begin. Just a second. Black Sea energy security, from the area of tension to the sea of opportunities. That's how I call this short video conference of ours today. The prosperity of the region comes from two things. First, it comes from the security, which is a challenge these days, especially because of occupation of some parts of Ukraine and the Russian military buildup. The second, prosperity comes from economic development that is predicated on an abundance of reliable and cheap energy, which means oil and gas, but not only. It also means electricity from different sources, including nuclear, wind, coal, renewable, and hydro. The region, the Black Sea region, is blessed with that. Georgia has a lot of hydro, but also recently discovered a major national gas reserve. Ukraine has huge gas potential. Some of the reserves are currently in the wrong hands, as we all know, unfortunately. So what is the challenge? When we are looking at the interdisciplinary approach of security and energy, I would argue myself that the challenge is the over-reliance on one big supplier. And the solution is, obviously, diversification. Geographic diversification of the natural gas, and there is plenty of gas around and within the Black Sea. Oil prices are used as a geopolitical instrument. Gazprom, for Gazprom, the main Russian company that sells energy, offers competitive prices to countries most loyal to Vladimir Putin, which are getting lower prices, whereas countries most independent from Russia get higher prices. The diktat of foreign policy. Happiness, as it was famously said in the 90s in Washington, D.C., happiness is multiple pipelines. They drive the price down and gives one alternative. Yes, Gazprom is capable of competing prices. But historically, through the disruptions of 2006, 2009, 2014, and today, we know how connected, how married the Gazprom economic power and the Russian geopolitics is. Once, the CEO of Gazprom was asked if his Gazprom company is a company or it is a government instrument. He thought about it and said it's 50-50. And it is. To wrap it up, the safe and peaceful Black Sea region is vital for Europe and European energy security and for the economic development of the markets in the region. Georgia, Ukraine, eventually Romania and Moldova can and should be looking into domestic resources as well as diversification of LNG terminals and interconnectors, so that you're not as dependent as historically you were because of the legacy of the Soviet power and the Cold War. This was my introduction. Now we'll pass it on to our guest. We'll start with Wojciech. The first question goes to you. Given the fact that Russia cut recently the gas supply to Poland in the wake of the Russian aggression of Ukraine, how is Poland coping, and to what extent does it affect Poland's energy security?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me and to this discussion, and welcome to my fellow panelists. Maybe I will start a bit statistically, because to what degree Poland is dependent from Russia now, I would say that gas is about 53% and oil 64%. But of course, we need to think of a broader picture and trends, because this is what matters. And as for gas, we reduced our dependence by 37 percentage points. In 2010, the dependence rate was at 90%. Now it's, I recall, 53. And for oil, we were dependent at 95. Now it's 64. So this is what you said in your introduction about diversification. And of course, it is undergoing in Poland. Much work has been done, as I showed in the small statistics, but still much is ahead of us. If you allow me, I will briefly present our model in a way. First, gas. In 2015, we opened our LNG terminal next to Szczecin in Świnoujście. It was the first one in Central Europe and the first one in the Baltic Sea. The capacity of this terminal is of 5 billion cubic meters, to be expanded to 7. It represents roughly 1/3 of our needs, our demand for gas. And I need to stress that it took roughly 10 years from the idea to the actual terminal being built. Secondly, we are about to open a Baltic pipe from Norway, to Poland. Again, it's 5 billion cubic meters, expandable to 10 billion cubic meters. And there are interconnections. We are building interconnections with Germany, of course, first virtual, then reverse on a YAML, then real reverse, with Czech Republic, with recently with Lithuania, giving us access to Klaipeda, and with Slovakia, which is kind of interesting because we are getting access to Adriatic Sea LNG terminals through Slovakia. So it means diversification on all directions. And if you ask me how we are coping with being cut of gas supplies from Russia, first, there's a bitter feeling that we were right about Russia. We were right about Nord Stream and so on. I underline a very, very bitter satisfaction, to be honest. Secondly, it means that our policy of diversification, we started it 15 years ago, was proven right. So we are continuing with this. Diversification, as you said, means independence. And of course, the process is not fully finished, but we are on a good way. And thirdly, of course, prices are getting higher. Of course, the inflation rate is now almost 12% year to year. Of course, if you go to the gas station in Poland, yes, we do pay roughly 8 zlotys, which is almost 2 euros per liter. But this is the cost we need to bear. Russia provoked in Ukraine. But I want to stress that this price is nothing to the price that our brave neighbors are paying now. So this is the broad picture of of the situation in Poland for the time.
Thank you very much, Wojciech, for your answer. Pretty astonishing. We now go on to Dionis Chenusha. Dionis, you're coming from Moldova. You're an expert in electricity, resilience, Eastern Partnership. You've had extensive studies in European legislations and mostly, essentially, everything that has been going on in the region in terms of energy security. To what extent is Moldova energy dependent? And what energy security and what does energy security really means for Moldova today, at this moment?
Thank you for the invitation. I would like to clarify that I am not an economist, but I'm a political scientist who work in the field of energy security. And you're right that I have spent some time in trying to understand and also monitor the latest development in the field. Obviously, what is going on in Moldova is in a way a reflection of the dependency that the EU has towards Russia. So Moldova is, of course, is the most, I think that is one of the most vulnerable in the region, if not the most, because we are importing more than, or about 99.9% of gas from Russia. And therefore, for us, it's very important to have a stable import of gas. But again, because the topic is so political and so politicized, especially now, obviously the price for the gas has an attachment, a political attachment to it. So when we had pro-Russian politicians in office, then the price was, let's put it in a way, it was cheaper to buy gas from Russia, but it was because of geopolitical concession that the country was making, and of course was favorable to Russia. Once this situation has changed, of course the conditions also have radically changed in favor of higher price. But that doesn't mean that the country was somehow left alone or felt totally unprepared. We have seen that it was possible to actually learn quickly from the Ukrainian colleagues in terms of how it is possible to actually buy on virtual market, on European market, and also how to import that gas from Poland, for instance, via Ukraine to Moldova. So in a matter of probably within few weeks in last fall, the country has managed to buy for the first time gas virtually, transit it from Ukraine, and actually make sure that it has some time to negotiate a better price with the Russian side. So diversification is not only about having, it's not only about having stable import of gas, but it's also about having enough maneuvering space in order to negotiate either with Russia or with other partners on better terms. So that's the idea of having, let's say, more guarantees to obtain a better price and not to succumb to geopolitical pressure. I think that this is a very important aspect that we are going probably to touch on during our entire conversation. But the last point that I would like to raise before leaving the floor to the next speaker, it's about the it's about the situation in which Moldova is, but also the role of other countries in the region, like Romania. I believe that Moldova is currently accepting the price that it is paying because it is thinking strategically in terms of having very soon access to the gas from Romania. So the problem of Moldova is not really in the possibility to import from Romania, but it's rather about the price. So the conditions that have been negotiated with Gazprom last year are in the current energy crisis more favorable. But in general, the country is ready already now to actually import gas from Romania when Romania will be able to produce enough gas to actually supply with it its neighbor. And here I will stop.
Thank you, Dennis, for your answer. Very interesting. There's a lot of elements there, a lot of moving elements there that are shifting as we speak, for the good or for the worst. Now, Rufin, you've been doing this for a while. You've been following developments, not only on energy, but you've been following geopolitics, international politics. This is something that you enjoy doing it, and I'm very happy to have you with us. From a Romanian point of view, how much has Romania been affected by the Russian invasion, illegal invasion of Ukraine in terms of energy interest?
First of all, thank you very much for having me in this panel. And yeah, I feel in a way as being the odd one out, since I'm not, as you already mentioned, since I'm not following energy security per se, so close than our colleagues here in this panel are doing. But I'm going to try and give you an answer that is starting from the perspective that an aggressor is playing a resource as a weapon of war and is trying to instrumentalize an economic set of relations in order to push forward or to twist arms for states in the Black Sea region and in the wider European region to submit to its will, its imperialistic will. Circling back to your question, how much was Romania affected by the subsequent energy crisis that the war of aggression started by Putin in Ukraine? I would say that, yeah, of course, I mean, the situation as a whole in Romania was far better than in other regional countries. Therefore, Romania was not that much affected as we are seeing now in Bulgaria, Moldova, and other countries in our neighborhood. We were, as you already know, we were and still are rather independent energetically to Russia, or to put it differently, our dependence on Russia is a matter of choice. We chose, in a sense, to maintain this commercial relations with Russia. So what happened in Ukraine, and again the subsequent energy crisis generated by the war there, is at the larger scale. It's affecting Romania the same it affects the average European Union. Of course, we do have to pay more for a liter of gas at the pump. Of course, there are prices who are going higher because of these new tariffs at the pump again. But other than this, when comparing, and I'm really glad that Wojciech already mentioned this, when comparing to the price Ukraine is paying, when comparing to the price other countries in the region who we as the European Union had the instruments to help more are paying. I would say that Romania is again in a fortunate position. And yeah, it's in this fortunate position is generated in Romania to a large extent by the fact that we have our own supplies and we have possibilities to diversify, and we do have money, and this is a very important thing and point to make. We do have the financial support, the European Union mechanisms through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan is granting its member states for diversifying. And I truly hope that the political establishment is going to take into consideration when pushing forward our national plan in diversification, are going to take into consideration also the price the society is going to bear for this diversification, because it's not just about modifying industrial processes in order to not to use this type of energy but use the other type of energy. Is not just about this, but it's also about the way the change is going to trickle down into society. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I've already took too much of your time here, but just to summarize and try to rephrase my answer to your really good question. I think that the energy crisis had an impact over Romanian society and Romanian economy, but by no means this impact is something that Romania cannot cope with.
Well, thank you, Rufin, for your extensive answer. Now, going back to Wojciech, I'd like to ask you a different question, something that goes a little bit far. Poland is one of the most among the closest allies of Romania. We are the founders of the 3 Seas initiative. We are also part of the B9 format. A lot of the politics, a lot of the regional challenges are being discussed by both our authorities in order to come up with answers, obviously. What are Poland's interests in the Black Sea region and within the Black Sea? Does Poland has any plans? Does the challenging security environment in the Black Sea region touches or affects national interest in some way? How do you see that?
Well, answering to this, I can answer in 2 ways. First, anecdotically, we are the part of a Black Sea caption area of the rivers, because 3 our rivers end up in the Black Sea. So in a way, we do have interest in the Black Sea region, and rather small, yet still. And on a serious note, I think we share the same interest. It's all about security in a way, because the concept itself of security is not about the region. It's not about a single state. It's much broader. One state cannot feel secure if it's surrounded by enemies. So if we are surrounded by stable countries, not endangered by local tensions, not to mention open conflicts, we feel safe as well. We want our partners, our friends to feel safe as well. We do not feel safe these days, of course. The Russian aggression against Ukraine, the war we are witnessing, has demonstrated clearly how important security is and how volatile, despite the concept of the 90s, because during the 90s we were all told that, you know, the war is not possible, the conflicts we knew is not possible, Europe, oh no, for 100% is not to even mention. And yet 2022 we are in the after 100 days of the classic conflict war in one of our neighboring countries. We do think about the security in the Black Sea, since it's about security of our partners in the EU, partners in the NATO. As you mentioned, there are formats which is 3 Cs. One of the Cs is, of course, Black Sea. There is a B9, of course, another format. So the ties between our countries are that important that we do care about it. And of course, we have partners in the Eastern Partnership. And if you add all of these, NATO, EU, and Eastern Partnership, you encompasses almost the whole Black Sea. If you put all on the map, except for the Russia, for obvious reasons, we do have all our partners. So it is our the region of the interest, and also about democratization, about the economic agenda, economic transformation. Most of the countries share the same experience of a Soviet rule, of the Soviet economy. So we want to leave it behind us, and we cooperate in this. And most of all, it is about friendship as well. And since the creation of the 3 Cs, special attention to regional energy security was there. And it's about the supply routes, because that's one thing. And we have the corridor, we call it in Poland the north-south corridor. We want to cooperate with all the countries in the region to make it not only east-west, because this is where we were very dependent, of course, but this corridor north to south, it's for the goods. This is building roads, motorways. It's about the railway, and it's of course about energy, the interconnections, gas interconnections, electricity interconnections. It's all about making the network as dense as possible, because diversification, as I recall your words and I recall my point from the first question, is about independence. This is why we care about it.
Thank you, Wojciech, again for your answers. I'll now pass the word to Dennis. Dennis, does Moldova has a plan to achieve energy independence? And when I say independence, obviously I also talk about diversification. I mean, I'm mostly talking about diversification, because total independence, I don't think such a thing exists. Well, not on earth so far, but does it has a plan? What does Moldova plans to do in the next 20 years? As we don't know the security infrastructure in the next 5 years or 10 years, but let's assume that it's not going to go very well, the relations between Moldova and Russia, as we have seen recently, that they are increasingly getting cold. That, you know, there are a lot of statesmen, there are a lot of these dynamics that are happening. How do you see Moldova gaining some sort of independence in terms of obviously security, energy security?
I have a problem with the word and the wording independence, because we can speak about autonomy and sovereignty in our decisions. We don't have independence, because even if we take the possibility to import LNG from the US right now, which is going to be quite significant given the deficit of non-geopolitical, or let's say less geopolitical gas available on the market. So we are still creating a new dependency. We're just creating a new dependency from a democracy. That's the point, that we are now fighting for creating autonomy in the energy field through the interdependencies with democracies or with countries that are not enemies, or they are having the same strategic agenda. For instance, Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan is not a big democracy, by the way, but we have common interests of strategic nature. The same goes for Turkey. Turkey is struggling to join the European Union, and still is a candidate state. It's a NATO member, but it is not, again, a successful democracy. So, but we are building interdependencies, and we agree to have those interdependencies with Turkey because we have common interest in the region, in the Black Sea. So I believe that I'm insisting too much on autonomy, but that's kind of like a concept which will allow us to actually escape the quite, let's say, weak, and not weak, but dangerous terminology of independence, because we are not independent. Maybe Romania can build this independence if the country manages to launch the production of gas in Neptune area in the Black Sea, and will be able not only to produce for its own internal needs, but also to export to Moldova. That would be a real energy independence. But for others who are importing LNG, or who are dependent on interconnectors, or who are dependent on old pipelines, like is Italy trying to import more gas from Algeria, or like France, or other parts of Europe that wants to build a pipeline from Spain to be able to transport the LNG gas from Spain to the rest of the continent. So we are interdependent, yes, and we are building energy autonomy. Now, going to the question about Moldova, I think that Moldova has a real chance to actually cut off the dependence on Russia and build interdependency, of course, with Romania. I think that that's the most important partner in the energy field, but it doesn't mean that Ukraine will not be as well playing a huge role, because again, if we stay with the concept of diversification, it means that we need to have both imports or flows of gas from both neighbors. Moldova has only 2 neighbors. It's not, and it doesn't have a real access to the Black Sea. We still rely on Ukraine for that purpose. So this means that we are now going to first of all, to make sure that the market the market is liberalized, that we have full unbundling, that we have the transporting or the transport system operator separated from the supplier. This would mean to have less leverage from Gazprom through the Moldovan company, Moldova Gas, to actually dictate any kind of suspicious conditions for the transporting system operator. This is the first thing, to finish with the unbundling and implement properly the 3rd energy package, which means also the secondary legislation. I should admit that many things were done even before the new government came in office last summer. So the things are moving in the direction of diversification and liberalization. Even the socialists, the pro-Russian socialists, were a big fan of promoting the idea of having a spare channel or interconnector with the pipeline with Romania, so that Moldova is not dependent on the gas which is supplied through Ukraine. Probably already back then, 2 years ago, knowing that something is going on in the relations between Russia and Ukraine, and also probably already forecasting some complications that could emerge out of this, I think, obvious, justified misunderstanding between Ukraine and Russia, because Russia is using, as Rufin already mentioned, Russia is using energy, is weaponizing gas in order to obtain certain geopolitical goals. Now, apart from gas, which is of course very important, Moldova is also very much dependent on electricity. The power production is based on what we receive from the separatist region of the country, Transnistria. From there, we are importing about 80% of the electricity, which is produced from the gas for which the region is not paying, the separatist region. So it's a very strange entanglement of different ways of dependencies of Moldova that has on Russian gas. And to disentangle this, we need, of course, to finalize, actually to build and finalize the electricity interconnection with Romania through the south of the country, and be able to import electricity, which in Romania, in the south of Romania, in Dobrogea region, is in abundance, and it is produced from renewables. And this will be a win-win situation. So Moldova is reducing, and this will be a very painful situation for the Transnistrian region, which is also dependent on the production of the power that is sold to Moldova and based on which they have currency. And based on that currency, they actually can survive as a separatist region. Okay, these are two elements that should be, of course, I think prioritized, and they are on the agenda. We have political support, but also financial support for the interconnection on electricity. We already have money, and we have selected the company, which is not a Romanian one. And here, I think that in Moldova, it was a little bit of scandal why it was not selected a Romanian company. Anyways, we have a company, an Indian company, that is going to build this interconnection, and hopefully in 2026 we will not be talking about that anymore, about this dependency on electricity. But on gas, as I mentioned before, answering your other question, it depends very much on the capacity of Romania to produce gas, and actually not only to produce gas, but also to make to produce it in such a way that the prices are of course attractive for the Moldovan consumers, because we already now are paying prices that are 3 times higher than it was last year. So the country is facing real serious problems, and these problems are affecting the other reforms and the popularity of the government to promote other reforms that are of structural nature. And here I will stop.
Thank you, Dennis, for your answer. We can see how complex the dynamics of politics are in Moldova. Rufin, going to you now. Earlier you talked about how Romania is dependent by choice, and how we have the capacity to actually, if the Russia cuts tomorrow the gas supply, we're fine. We'll continue to be as we are. We'll continue with the same prices as we are. Is that correct?
Well, I shouldn't go that far saying that we're fine, but Romania is definitely in the position of being able to maintain production capacity and to a large extent to maintain the consumption the population has for a short to medium term. That being said, of course, the dependence by choice label is how should I put it? It's just a matter of saying that Romania, unless the other countries in the region, Romania is in the position of supporting a harsh condition generated by the fact that, say, Russia is going to decide to not to supply Romania anymore with the quantities that we're now importing from there. So that's on short to answer to this rather semantical type of question that you raised.
I have another question for you that adds up a little bit.
I thought I'm going to just have this one.
Yeah, you are going to have this one. In your perspective, and giving all your background and working in international politics, foreign policies, legislatives, and all of that, what role does the EU, the European Union, have or should have in the Black Sea energy market?
That's a really important question, and I think that we should have a panel specifically on this, and not over an hour, but why not over a full day? I should start my answer to your question with something that Dennis already mentioned, the fact that Moldova is boosting its capacity, or is building even new capacities of transport of energy in order to be able to cope with its needs. And another point that Dennis was making is the fact that Moldova is wary of the fact that should the price of energy or energy supplies is not going to be something that Moldovan government will afford to pay. It's for Moldova and other countries in the region, it would be just as difficult of a situation as it is not to have what to buy. And starting from just these 2 points, the role the EU can play in the region is into helping those who are in an unfortunate position nowadays, helping them to be able to bear the price of this diversification. And I think, that being said, I think that the EU, especially the EU, is in the position to better understand the need for doing this, because as all of us already know, the European Union and the mechanisms within the European Union are generating this line of thoughts. The European Union already knows that we as a bloc are not just in the business of safeguarding the well-being of our citizens, but we're in the business of safeguarding democratic values and democracy. And I know that that it might be a bit difficult in some parts of Europe, this this struggle to safeguard democracy. But I think that the European Union, through the mechanisms already in place and through the partnership that European Union has with countries in the wider Black Sea region, is already in the position to be instrumental in helping them to cope with this new situation. If we are to talk about what the European Union is already doing in its efforts to maintain security in the Black Sea region, so at the border, at its eastern border, even in terms of energy. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to start with. I mean, European Union, it's part of the European Union mechanisms are concentrating on safeguarding, how should I put it, easily to be accessed markets. So that is something that the European Union is concentrating its attention and should concentrate its attention.
Thank you,
forward.
Thank you, Rufin, for your extensive answer.
Thank you.
I think it's important to remind our viewers that within the energy sector, the energy security sector, the competences first lies with the national governments. It is up to member states to tackle these issues and to further action whatever choices, diversification they have. I have two questions, but pretty swift. And my next question goes to whoever wants to answer, because it's pretty general. To you, who do you think can guarantee the security environment in the Black Sea if billions were to be invested for exploiting it, wind and all the energy sources? Let's say you're ExxonMobil, or let's say you're a huge international company. You have 50 billion that you want to invest, and investment that would help the countries in the region, Romania, for example, Bulgaria. And you see what's going on right now in the northern part of the Black Sea. You see mines thrown everywhere in the sea. You see that nobody's safe. So as a company, you're asking, why would you invest? Why would Romania invest? Or it's not just private? Who can guarantee the security environment? Just a swift answer if some of you wants to intervene.
I could just remind to our viewers that the EU has been quite creative in developing new tools, and I think that apart from and why this what I am trying to say is related to the investment in the potential new production of gas or oil, is that the EU is offering the guarantee through its creativity in terms of what tools it is developing right now. Now I will mention the joint procurement mechanism, which is something that the EU has proposed as a response to the current energy crisis, which is very much linked to the security crisis that the Russian war has brought upon us, upon Ukraine, first of all, and the rest of Europe. And at the same time, there are also other ways through which the EU is trying to actually make sure that the countries are supporting each other. I don't know why this was not mentioned in the latest conclusions of the EU Council that touched on Ukraine, EU applications of the associated countries, and so on and so forth, including the sanctions. But in the news previous to the sanction, I have read about the idea that the EU is going to insist on establishing as many as possible bilateral solidarity agreements for supply of gas in case of emergency situation. So one of the ways to do that is actually to make sure that the countries have control over their critical infrastructure related to gas. And I mean here the storages, which we know very well that in Germany and Austria, for some reason, were under the control of Gazprom, but not who was not really implementing the rules that were applied to all other companies operating in the EU. So therefore, for me, like there are let's say three elements. First of all, to have bilateral solidarity agreements. Secondly, is to make sure that the interconnectors, new interconnectors are in place. And I know that Romania is waiting for the interconnector between Greece and Bulgaria. This is very important to bring more gas from Azerbaijan, and why not from other countries through the swapping mechanisms. So even from the Central Asia, but through swaps to make them available from Azerbaijan, from Iran to Azerbaijan, and from Azerbaijan to Georgia, and then to Turkey and to the rest of Europe. And third is about the critical infrastructure in the field of gas. It should be probably nationalized if Russia is not fulfilling the rules, and that should be like a no concession topic. And here I will stop.
What about just very strict? What about Turkey's role within the Black Sea region in the energy security sector?
I think that Turkey wants to play a bigger role, and I think that it has the idea is that I don't want to use this kind of wording to frame it in such a way, but Turkey is a beneficiary of the current situation. Why? Because Ukraine is being attacked by Russia. We speak about territories that are not under control of Ukraine anymore, temporarily, hopefully, and that are used to transport, to supply gas. So now only about 70% of the gas that is transported through Ukraine, it is under secure supervision of Ukrainian side. So if Russia decides to do something to those pipelines, we are going to talk about the importance of Turkey, a maximum importance of Turkey as a supplier to gas to Western Balkans, but also to the rest of the countries. And here, what is also important to emphasize is the role of reverse flows. And I think that Moldova has been securing its kind of option as well. So now we have the possibility to reverse, to have the access to reverse flows, but this requires very, very strong compressors that also cost money, and they should be built so that we are going to be able to physically pump the gas from the south to the north. And this requires money. Again, it's going back to your question about investment. So even if we don't build something new and try to upgrade the existing infrastructure in the energy sector, we need money. This money goes for building compressors to pump the gas from the south to the north. This money should be also invested in increasing the capacity of the existing pipelines, including the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, but also the pipeline with Algeria and many others, and to build new pipelines, as I mentioned before, through the Pyrenees to from Spain to France, and then to the rest of Europe.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is quite an argument. Well, I think we're getting close to 1 hour time. I would like to thank each and every one of you. Wojciech, thank you very much for.
I think that Wojciech wanted to say something.
Sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah.
If we have just a minute, because I wanted just to say to Dennis, because he mentioned the role of Turkey, and one of the things is that Turkey holds the key to the Black Sea. I'm talking about the Straits. And I want to draw your attention to the project of building LNG terminal in Odessa 2015. If we talk about this and we remember why it didn't work, it shows how much work and how much talk we need to hold with our Turkish friends to convince them that diversification is also in the interest of Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to again thank you for being with us today, for taking the time. I know it's Friday, late Friday. Everyone is thinking of their weekend. Wojciech, Dennis, Rufin, thank you. You've been fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to see you guys again.
Thank you for having us.
Watching us from or from wherever you are. Thank you for watching us. I know these topics are not the easiest to fully understand and to grasp, but as I said at the beginning, not only we have tried to answer some of the questions, but we even asked more questions, and I think that goes back to what I said at first. This is why we gathered. This is why we talked and we exchange ideas. We debated. Thank you. This is the second episode of Resilience Talks. On to the next one. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.